All right, good to have you back here on this Wednesday edition of the program, kind of digesting still the State of the Union address, everything that Joe Biden said and didn't say. And much of what he said, well, inaccurate. Inaccurate. So that's how we move into this next phase of the program, because they feel he covered things that he did at home, ignored other things, important topics left out of his speech. And I want to bring in Dr. John Lott to discuss this from the Crime Research Center, because, Doctor, you pointed out the inaccuracies and the flat-out falsehoods, the lies, if you will, and there were numerous mischaracterizations, stretching the truth, and complete outright fiction, right?
Right. I mean, there are varying degrees of inaccuracies that he had there. So, for example, he claimed he had been responsible for somehow record growth in wages and benefits over his first year. Well, wages and benefits increased by 4%. Inflation over that period of time increased by 7.5%. So people's real income actually fell by 3.5 percentage points that were there. He made this big deal about canceling flights from Russia. Well, Russia had already canceled all of its flights to the United States because Canada and the European Union had banned Russian aircraft from flying over their countries. And it's pretty difficult to fly from Moscow to either New York or Los Angeles without being able to fly over either Canada or Europe. He makes this big deal about being tough on Russian banks with sanctions. He sanctioned 8 banks. He mentioned large banks, but there are 8 banks that he sanctioned. There are 333 banks in Russia, another 35 non-bank financial institutions. It's a completely meaningless restriction that he's put on them, because they can transfer money through any of these other 325 banks that are available. He talks about SWIFT and the restrictions on a few banks in Russia. Again, it's equally meaningless. The interesting thing there is that Europe had actually been pushing for more of a complete ban on banks in Russia being able to use SWIFT. The United States had fought against that, apparently, because Biden wants to continue to buy oil and gas from Russia and wants to be able to go and use this international bank transfer system to go and transfer money from us to Russia to pay for the oil and gas. And his stuff on crime was just amazingly bad.
Here's the thing, John, because a lot of people talked about this, and it's true. Ukraine is an epicenter of bad actors. It's money laundering. It's human trafficking. Ukraine is corrupt throughout its government. It's pretty well known, one of the most corrupt countries in the world. And so a lot of people are saying, well, Russia should be, I've read different accounts where Russia is going in to clean these things up. You don't go and carpet bomb apartment buildings. You don't target civilian populations because you're angry with whatever crime is being committed. Are there questions about the way both sides have conducted themselves? Yes, to a point, but there is no excuse for me for what Russia is, which is going with an unprovoked attack.
Well, look, Russia is also a very corrupt country. So it's kind of weird to go and say, well, there's another country which is about as corrupt as we are, and so we have to go in and take them over to clean them up. That's not what's happening in this case. And apparently Russia is already making threats against Moldova, which is to the south west of Ukraine. So the whole thing was
a small landlocked country. Just so people understand, it sits between Ukraine and Romania. It's a small landlocked country, not a very big country. Doesn't have much to defend itself with, if anything at all. And if the Russian tanks decide to come out of Crimea and hook left, they'll be in Moldova in a day, potentially. And so then the question becomes, how much farther do we allow Vladimir Putin to go? NATO, the United States, at one point do you say, that's it? We are going to have a war. I mean, we're standing in a very dangerous place today, and we have the weakest leader in American history at the helm, and I'm not sure he even knows he's at the helm.
Right. Well, there's something like 68% of Americans think that if Trump was president, we wouldn't have had this invasion in there. You have like 38% of Democrats who feel that way. But, you know, just to get back to the inaccuracies and misleading statements, Biden made a big deal last night about being against defunding the police. Well, and he claimed that he had put aside $350 billion in the coronavirus relief package to go and hire police. Well, the thing is, his administration has made that comment recently again, and fact checkers on the left have called him out on it, saying that, look, there was $350 billion for state and local governments, but they could use it for anything. And in fact, if you go and look at the Treasury Department statements on what they expected the money to be used for, you will look in vain for any mention of policing. Not saying that they couldn't figure out a way to go and do that, but that is hardly the priority that's there. You know, and you just have to go back a month to look at Biden's statements when he went to New York City to give his big talk on crime. Did he go and call out the New York City for cutting its police budget by $1 billion? Did he call out the district attorneys there for refusing to prosecute violent criminals or even criminals with misdemeanors? Did he call out New York State for its bail reform, which is letting criminals out with essentially no bail in many cases or very little bail? Did he call out the people in the area for letting out over half the inmates from jails in the area that's there? I mean, it's pretty obvious why crimes increase. And for him to somehow seem like he's going to be tough now on crime, you know, you can go back to the presidential campaign where he was publicly calling for moving funds from police departments to social welfare programs.
And so did Kamala Harris. And then, of course, he says we need to secure the border. Another example of where he's failed. The biggest fear is that we need to manufacture in America. We need to do this and this and this, make all of these things, but not oil and gas. We can't produce more oil and gas and energy that we desperately need so that we can be energy independent. We'll be an energy superpower if we get the extreme left out of the way. But that's not where we are, is it?
No, it's not. And instead he wants to go and buy oil and gas from Russia. I mean, if you want to hurt Russia, what you want to do is produce more oil and gas to lower the price of oil and gas. They get 75% of their foreign currency exchange from selling oil and gas. They get even more from selling coal. So that would be one way of making it so that they're not going to be so adventuresome and having the money to go and advance and take over other countries. But he's refusing to go and do that. You know, he claims that he's responsible for the 6.5 million jobs that were created during his first year. I mean, if you look at the projections that economists had, economists were systematically predicting many more jobs than that were going to be created. I would go and argue that his programs actually reduced the amount of jobs that would have been created. But look, you expect more jobs to be created when the country began to open up. He had a vaccine given to him. He had different types of other treatments that had been developed for people that had the coronavirus. And the country was opening up anyway. He delayed opening it up and made it so that you had fewer jobs than you otherwise could have gotten. And you know, the reduction in real income and other problems that were his responsibility.
It's all on his watch. There's no question. But pandering in an election year, fairly predictable. John, greatly appreciate as always. Dr. John Lott from the Crime Prevention Research Center. Thank you for being here. You've done a masterful job of parsing it out. Thank you.
Always great to talk to you, Steve. Thanks.